Good afternoon, thank you everybody for being here. On Monday, May 12th. Getting this meeting started, 3 o'clock. We'll call it order and roll call.
Chair Burke,
Here.
Vice Chair Kohler,
Here.
Board Member Tinsley,
Here.
Board Member Phelps.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Yep, sorry I wasn't here. I had COVID last month. So,
Yes.
yeah, first time.
Wow.
First time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was,
Pretty something to be proud of. Wow.
it was, it struck me down. So, but I feel better now and a little anemic, I guess. You don't eat right. You gotta have all your
Guess what?
red blood cells back or whatever, I don't know, but anyway.
Welcome
Taking
back.
iron,
Better.
I don't know, folic acid, all kinds of
Get you a
stuff.
prenatal vitamin.
Yeah, all kinds of things. I had one of the friends that I went and saw in Arizona, I think that's where I caught it on the plane, but anyway, he's a pharmacist. He's the one that was in with COVID, 21 days in intensive care.
Oh, wow.
With COVID. He just about died.
Okay.
Yeah.
You feel better and
And that was great, but anyway, I told him I was anemic, he starts sending me, what, takes this vitamin, B12 and folic acid and iron, and eat raisins and.
We're glad you're back.
Get right back and feel better. Yeah. We'll move on to approval of the April 14 minutes. And do we have any corrections or?
Just had a. Well, kind of follow up. Questions. So on page 2, Oak Street right of way. Is there a written plan? Avery referred to one, or is it still in progress?
we're still working on that.
Okay. Cause I'd like to see that at some point.
I was under the assumption that that's at the city council and look for guidance on that.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that and other business. We'll touch on that before.
That's at the end of Oak Street, is that where that is?
That is where Oak Street has no pavement between Jefferson and St. Helens. So kind of a footpath through there.
Okay. You get the map out here, that's a.
Yes, we'll more discussion to come on that later.
Okay.
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
Let's see here. There's a footpath, what am I, got it, it's over, here's Oak Street, so it's there,
Mhm.
that area there, I guess. That's where they go, where George's septic used to be, when he used to live over there, that general area. Okay,
Just south of the coffee house, Sister's Coffee.
oh, yeah, okay. Do we have any other adjustments or?
The year.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah.
Good find them. Yeah, that's good, I'm younger now.
It was bound to happen at some point.
Yeah. But I love the border, the footer. Having with page 3 of 5, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe you're gonna follow up on this later too, but about getting the date on the management plan. It is 2022.
Mhm.
It was referenced somewhere else in the document, but it was 2022 when it was written.
Yeah, I'll see what it takes to kind of get that
And something like
bold on.
you just added or something.
Mhm. I'll see what we can do about that.
Okay. That's it for me. I would say generally, it seems like there's a different style, maybe less detail. And both are good.
Less
But-
verbatim script, a little bit more summary.
Yeah. But I liked it. It's good. Thank you.
We have the recordings.
For the, yeah.
Minutes are
for
spent
the-
there to refresh and summarize what was discussed. But if there's anything that's left out, these approval of the minutes times are time to bring that up if something was missed out on.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I move that the minutes of the April 14th, 2025 meeting be approved with one minor edit to the footer.
A second my motion.
All approved, or all approved? Aye.
Yes,
Any opposed?
Motion passes.
Don't have any visitor communication, I believe.
Just the written comment that was emailed and distributed to you earlier. I do have that printed out in these your packets. And after the meeting, that will be added, to what page for record.
okay.
You had any time to review the email? Ready?
You wanna start with that, you know?
Uh,
The other information about the,
It ties into our agenda item for board business.
Okay, so we'll move on for visitor communication and go to board business for 4A Heritage Tree nomination. Number HT 24-01.
So at the request of the board, we did have the arborist that performed the initial inspection to go back and take a core sample of the tree. They weren't able to hit the dead center of the tree, but based on the amount that they were able to get in the sample, they could extrapolate that. In summary, their professional opinion is that it does not meet the 200-year requirement of arborism pine tree village. And the report in here from Arbor One does have the addendum on the second page where they include their observations from the core sample inspection. As well as some images of the core sample itself.
well, from my limited knowledge, since I'm not an arborist, I would come to the conclusion it's very hard to actually age a tree like this. Because ponderosa pines grow at such a different rate depending on their conditions and their age. I have 2 ponderosas on my own property. And they are growing right along, one's in the ground and one's in a pot, but they're both growing like mad. And they're probably around 5 years old, plus or minus, the both of them. So, this arborist guesses at the tree. I would not guess the tree to be older than 200 years, but there's really no knowing. I was thinking, and then I read Susan's email quite carefully. And she goes at it from different points of view, how quickly this particular pine tree might have grown. And I'll just point out, like, it took me a moment in paragraph 3, which starts with, it got me thinking. I'm 77 years old, blah, blah, blah. In the second line there, it's not around 3 feet per year. She grew it around 3 inches per year. Then after you get that in your brain, then the rest of what she says is all about inches, and it's more consistent. So I cannot conclude that it's more or less than 200 years.
Sure.
I know that you had one on your property that turned out to be older than you thought, right?
Yeah, we thought it was around 60, and then when we, cause we cored it, and then we had it cut, and it was well over. Or 90 to 100, and then this one, right next to City Hall, is it still drying? And
It's still on the
we
line.
gotta look at it, it's so cool, massive tree, so exciting.
Yeah.
Not that old. Like,
Water.
what did we think? We got
Small.
150 or
I think water though, where.
for
it's here.
sure, it was the canal.
You know, the water that was here and a lot of the trees like the canals.
Mhm.
And this was the gymnasium
Yeah,
area here, right?
yeah,
And it had lawn around it
Uh-huh.
and,
a roof.
yeah,
probably.
and the water, snow came
Uh-huh.
off, and I think. That's it. I planted a tree, a pine tree, um. 10 years ago. And it's. I don't know, 20 feet tall. The growth on it each year,
Yeah,
it's about like that. It just takes off. I
yeah,
can't believe how much it grows
yeah,
every year. Then the wolves come out but then it'll slow down.
right.
But it gets irrigation from the sprinklers and it just,
That's what we saw in the tree rings, the tree that we removed on our property a month ago. It was like 60 years of unirrigated, and then as soon as the irrigation is installed, the growth that happened in the 30 years since the house is built was equivalent to the 60 years before. It was the irrigation.
a juniper like that, and
Oh,
it just, as soon as you put water in,
Well,
all of a sudden those growth rings are like this and before it.
yeah,
You have to get the old magnifying glass out. Yeah, it's hard to say what the age of those are,
yeah, or the growth.
looking at where the limb structures are and,
Well, hopefully this kind of exercise with taking a core sample of the
Yeah.
tree paired with that document I shared a couple months back.
Yeah, that's fun.
Showing how the bark can be an indicator of tree age.
Yeah,
I have
Kind
that
of-
somewhere, yeah.
I'll be sure to redistribute that to you folks, so you have it on hand. But maybe that's a good tool for us to use rather than boring trees.
This one
Yeah.
here, was it this one?
Yes,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that kind of, it gives brackets for, approximate ages.
and I think there's more about like the growth habit, how the crown looks and the branches. On later pages in that document, which looks like you have those there too. And help in narrowing down an age for the tree.
Needed, but.
Avery, did you have any input from that report?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it was, oh, I'm echoing. I think it was a good report. I think it gives a pretty good idea to us about the age of the tree. I think something that it makes me think in that this heritage tree program is pretty new and we just kind of adopted it is how important is it to the board that a tree is 200 years old, and why is that a must requirement? Because when I would look at a tree and the value that it provides to the community, age wouldn't really be a significant factor in my mind. You know, maybe something to do with its historical significance, who planted it, or what the story that that tree tells might be something that I would consider. But age in itself is important, but I don't know that it should be a must factor. I wonder, if we're looking at, I think this is specifically for ponderosas, but I'm kind of curious to the history of why that became a part of the criteria, and whether or not the board feels like it's, necessary to continue on that path, being that this is a really new program, and how much kind of conversation we've had to have around this one particular thing. So.
Mr. Chair, did the board review that code language when it was first introduced?
We did, and I think it was just a recommendation from previous
Right.
qualifications from, I don't recall what city it came from, but I think it was just verbiage from there that we just took from the start. And we're like, yeah, I think that sounds good, we're just getting this started, but I think that's a valid point on I don't know
To be
if
more
necessarily
approximate.
years of life really do mean anything. It's the significance, it's the size, it's the beauty. I personally don't like this tree because it's right next to the house.
Mhm.
Right, there's a lot of, I don't want to misspeak for it in front of her.
Talks
because
about the
right, there's a lot-
area around it,
Yeah, there's a lot of
water.
value to her. There's gonna be probably this tree right next to the house,
Mhm.
and so. The significance and just that, the whole picture, I don't think that it's a heritage tree based off just the location. But
There are other trees on that street too that are big,
yeah,
you know, if you drive down whatever street that's on, there's some other big trees down there that are as big or bigger.
you know, worst case scenario is like we do. Vote to be a heritage tree and then in a year it becomes an issue and now she has to go back on what. Trying to get it down, we're just gonna fall on our house and. That is a safety issue.
Yeah, catch that, that's it there. Heritage tree.
Well, we talked about it
Yeah.
maybe being incongruent with some of the other work that's being done in the city for fire safety. That, you know, that's a bit of a conflict.
I'm all on board with fire safety. But a large growth tree that's above the house
Mhm.
is not a fire problem.
Yeah, so that doesn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, it does tie into what we were talking about with the urban forestry management as well, of like. We have a lot, you know, we have a large urban canopy and how much of those, you know, what's the overall goal with maintaining that to such a percentage of the overall coverage of the town? And mature, really mature, you know, these older trees, and then just having that dynamic age class, so. I think it can support the goal, which is what was stated in the management plan, of that the Heritage Tree Program is one way to promote. People being engaged with urban forestry and helping us kind of keep eyes out. But yeah, I think being mindful of, especially the first one. And so it's like we've really talked about it, but it is nice to have something to sort of sink our teeth in and say why or why not. Cause I think others will be much easier, but this is what we're working with right now, so.
In our code, it does leave room for siting issues. So location of the tree is a consideration that the board can take. However, the 200 years is set in our code. So that is
Okay.
there and a non-negotiable unless we go through changing the code, but as of right now, does not meet the requirements.
Well, I'd be open to taking that up at a later time.
Mhm.
Because my memory is that at the time, the Urban Forestry Board actually started working on this again, picking it up and looking and saying, oh, but we need these forms, blah, blah, blah. That those two parameters were already there, and we just kind of ran, you know, we didn't put a lot of proactive thought about that. We were more focused on how we can get these forms done and what about the private property owners, so I wouldn't mind revisiting that and maybe also. Considering more carefully other species of trees and how. You know, it might not be appropriate that it needs to be 200 years old. If it's an apple tree, for example.
Yeah, the age and height requirements are only for ponderosa plants.
Cause there's so many that probably distinguish, yeah,
Yeah.
something to give us a qualifier. Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha. So I have seen this tree more than once, and I do think it's a very handsome tree. Personally, to me, it's not so much an issue of it being close to the house, because that's part of the. It's part of the story of Sisters, is that there's a lot of big ponderosa trees right next to houses and commercial buildings, and big other trees too. And the homeowner, Suzanne Cobb, has taken care to prune this tree up and be considerate of its roots and take people's recommendations on how to care for it. But it seems like a deal breaker if it's just not 200 years old as far as anybody can tell. That's where I end up,
Yeah.
even though
Sure.
who knows how old it really is.
You know, speaking of the heritage, what, not just age and height, but also historical or something. This is on the site of the first post office, or this was on the, where the stage used to stop or something like that. That would give more support to call it a heritage tree. You know, you see those old pictures of sisters with that old fire towel.
Yeah.
That one tree that was
Mhm.
so big and I don't know if you've seen that and you know, if that thing was still around, it would sure as heck be a heritage tree, heritage site. And you know, think about driving through states and you see heritage markers and it's, you know, this wagon train or this massacre or something like that and putting some historical connection to it might also uh, give it more credence as a heritage tree.
More authenticity. More authenticity.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
More
good
value.
word,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
Cause there's bigger trees than that, right over there in the park, I think,
Mhm.
older
Certainly.
and bigger. And why not designate them or, you know, and who started that park and how long's it been here and did somebody say there was somebody's name or something on one of the trees over there?
There's a plaque.
A plaque,
It says
yeah,
Tree of the Year 2009.
okay, and you know, who put that there? Was it the
The
city?
Urban Forestry Board.
Okay, the Urban Forestry Board,
Yeah,
okay.
it says on the plaque.
Oh, okay. And, you know, I thought maybe the garden club or, you know, somebody like that could have something to do with it.
I don't know. And sidebar there,
Mhm.
Avery and I have done a lot of work out in Creekside Campground. Selecting certain trees that we'd like to nominate for heritage trees. So there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
You can even call it a heritage grove.
And that might be something, yeah, to designate a whole group of trees, a group of trees and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very lucky to have that campground.
Right.
All those trees. So anyway, I digress.
are we to the point now where after that discussion, where we're gonna accept the denial of this? Or how are we gonna go about?
Quit. I,
Do we think we can make, I mean, I guess we could start.
do we make
Yeah.
make a recommendation to the board? Is that what we do?
You'd be recommending it to council
To
for
council,
their
that's what I meant.
review and final approval.
Okay,
If we
But-
wanted to do that.
okay,
Given that it's already violating the parameters or not meeting the basic parameters, I have doubts.
I think if we, from my understanding, we just need to make a motion that it doesn't meet the minimum requirements. And that as
it
per,
appears not to meet the requirements.
Yeah, the nomination would be denied at this stage of the process.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to deny. While we appreciate the nomination.
Right,
It doesn't, and we kind of went through the exercise of evaluating age and criteria, it doesn't meet. The age criteria of at least 200 years old, and so. Make a motion to deny. Heritage tree nomination number HT 24-01.
Okay, I'll second.
all in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed?
Mr. Chair, motion passes.
I think for the work on this specific and I think that we need to. Go back to it on board, but and see, maybe add something about authenticity, history and. Also evaluate what we wanna do in those years, if they're stuck on 200 or. Or do we wanna lower that or?
Maybe we should get more nominations first and see if we're coming up against it.
And Ms. Cobb was cognizant of the fact that it might not get approved and she wanted to test the process.
Yeah.
Which we.
Yeah, definitely. I'm
yeah,
not sure if we can communicate that to her, like
should we write a letter to her, is it thanking her for the
That would be
nomination?
nice. Yeah.
And
She's sports.
Yeah, it's
She's
great, gets us going and
Yeah.
gets us something to think about, and that's what the Urban Forestry Board is here to do, to help, and that was a great start, you know?
brought up some questions that we didn't foresee when we were bringing the
Right.
process together.
Yeah.
And I think her request is not unreasonable. Just in her letter that's, was to state that it's likely, is it not more reasonable to adjust the estimated age of peak to be between 100 and 200 years old? Sure. I think that that's a fair assessment. I don't think that it's. From all her good points and from. Observations of trees around town in the forest. And what you just went through. Too.
Sure.
I'd be surprised if it was less than. 100 years old.
Yeah, so looking at the arborist report, the number of growth rings counted were 27. And then 11, so that's 38 years there. About 3 inches worth were missing from a scar, and they lost about 3 to 5 inches because they couldn't get to the dark center of the tree. So if you kind of extrapolate that out, you're not even getting close to 100.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a big old growth tree. It looks like a healthy. Growing tree that you'd want in your forest, you know. Of an age group,
Which is gonna move the house over.
Do you wanna draft a letter? Do you want?
I would encourage the board to put something together and it can be reviewed at the next meeting.
Okay.
If somebody wanted to do that, I would just need that. Say 2 weeks before the meeting, so we can get it in the packet. And then the board can talk about it.
she named it even,
It's her dad's name.
yeah.
It was her dad.
That's. More touchy.
Do you have anything to add? Cause you were part of the original.
Yes, and I remember us talking about. Really churning over this process, and we finally had to go, this, the stake in the sand, like you said, Patrick, was. Let's get something down there and then we can modify it as we go through the actual nominations. So if anything, I think Susan has really helped the board here. By being the first to volunteer to make that nomination, so we can improve on the process. When I kind of look at the way it's worded for Ponderosas. That they should be approximately 200 years or more. And the tree should be approximately 30 inches or greater. And or more than 85 feet tall. The only thing it's met is the 33 inches, which is just 3 inches more than our minimum, so it just didn't seem to meet enough. So I think you guys are making a good decision based on that criteria, and then maybe if we get a few more nominations, maybe even nominations that you yourselves put together for these beautiful trees we see in the park and some fun. I think that would help iron out a little bit more. Does it need to be modified or not? And then Jackson, does the city, it looks like there's a denial box here on the form and a city manager signature. Would that all go with the letter? I don't know. How does
Yeah,
that work?
we could send a final copy of the denied permit with the letter. That can be done. But that, or if there wasn't a letter being put together, I would be contacting that individual saying. The request has been denied, I'll be thanking them for their time and effort, much shorter than a letter.
Yeah.
But certainly conveying that to the applicant. Maybe not with a copy of the permit.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea, because you're not gonna meet for another month to go over the letter. And then agree on it, at least give the heads up that here was the outcome of the meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Let's look at your letter. Within a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, just giving me enough time to put it in a format, get it in the packet, so then the board can review it collectively.
Okay.
Moving on to other business, 5A. Route heave sidewalks at 1094 East Horseback Trail. Saddlestone development.
I went, yeah, I went to see that tree. And it's a real Lena.
So a little bit of background, the homeowner reached out. Around January with concerns about the root heave sidewalk, and the first report dated February 4th, 2025. Asking what their options would be. This is one of those unique cases where a homeowner is responsible for replacement if necessary. And so they were wondering, what is the better option? Do we replace the sidewalk to remove the trip hazard? Because it is creating a trip hazard at
Yeah,
that
I
joint,
see it lifted up there.
and or removing the tree. We left it up to them to decide on what they wanted to do, since both the tree and sidewalk are their responsibility. Then they came back and noticed that the other tree is having similar issues, though not to the extent as the first tree. And so they were concerned about, they're replacing the sidewalk to do it all at once. They're gonna take out trees, do it all at once. They're trying to get an idea of what their options are. Their concern is if they replace the sidewalk and leave the trees, that the issue will persist.
Yeah. Now, were those trees planted after the sidewalks were put in? Do you know?
Simultaneously, that
Interesting.
development required a certain number of trees. I think it's like 35 feet, maybe 35 feet, so that
Okay,
there was originally a third one right on the other side of the driveway. It seems to have died some time ago.
They planted those trees like. Right up close to the
6 to
sidewalk.
8
and the-
inches from the sidewalk.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
just,
Not all of them. Elsewhere in the block, they're more like middle of the.
Going through historic Google images, that's one of the first houses on that street.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
So
That
maybe
was-
it was there before the sidewalk?
No sidewalk was there, because that would have been required for the house to be final down. Getting all the required public improvements, being sidewalk and trees.
The trees were planted by the developer or no?
Likely the developer. It's hard to say that long ago.
Be interesting, because, city council, we're going through a list of trees for defensible space, reasons for wildfire risk, and. And when I was reading in this report, these aspens are something you probably don't wanna put next to a sidewalk. And I'm wondering if maybe we need to start thinking about development code for a list of approved trees within a certain distance of pavements and
Yeah.
structures like that. I don't know if we have that. I don't think we do.
There is a recommended and prohibited street tree list. I do believe aspens are on the recommended list.
Okay.
No, I might be mistaken. I know they're not on the prohibited list, but we do tend to see
they
their
grow
roots causing,
fast.
we do tend to see their roots causing sidewalk
Yeah.
heaving issues.
It just, yeah, it's kind of, okay, we're creating a problem by
Yeah,
saying you have to have this here. You have to have a sidewalk, you have to have a tree every so many feet, and the sidewalk has to be so many feet from the curb. Is that enough growing area there? To put in an aspen, or should it be a shrub or something? A 9 bark or deer would eat that, I guess, but, something.
yeah.
I could add to that. I think it's really common for municipalities to put together lists of approved street trees, but then classify them by the appropriate strip width. So for example, if you have only 4 feet in between the sidewalk and the road, there's only a small number of trees that are appropriate for that site. Whereas when you have 8 to 10 feet, you can fit the majority of trees can grow in that site without causing infrastructure conflict. So that's one way that you can go about, the existing list that we have in Sisters could be broken down into classified, segments where you'd say, okay, this is a class 1 tree, or these trees are appropriate beneath power lines. These are not, these are appropriate in 4-foot strips. These are not, kind of thing.
Do the local, tree suppliers, do they have those kind of lists of recommendations, or, you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and the trees all come from the valley, you know, and I remember talking to people that were selling them, you know, and they, this is gonna die here, you know, it's just not made to live here in Central Oregon, but it looks great. And, are there lists out there that arborists have, or I don't know, florists, what's the proper term for
Nurseries.
Huh?
Nurseries.
Nursery, that's it, thank you. For
Yeah,
nursery,
I know the city of Redmond has put quite a bit of work into developing a list with classifications like we're talking about. And then OSU Extension has their Firewise and Waterwise gardening lists, which really help with finding appropriate species for our region. Sisters is a little bit different, you know, than Bend and Redmond as well. So it's something worth considering, you know, that a list specific to that area, to the area of Sisters might be worth investing time into. But yeah, generally, I think nurseries are in the business of selling trees, and so sometimes they will advocate to sell the things that they have available. It's not uncommon. So yeah, I like to say you could trust folks at the nursery, and I don't have any reason to believe that you shouldn't. It's just that there is a little bit of a interest there in getting stuff moving out the door. So yeah.
thanks. Yeah, like, yeah, having, a space and make that aware, for the developer. That if you have a narrow, you know, they put these houses close together and you're not gonna put a pot of roast between two of these houses now. When there's only 3 feet or 6 feet between them and the eaves come down, you know, you just can't do that, so. I don't know, might be something that council wants to.
Yeah,
discuss.
I think that would be important in the developer code, and then also would be helpful for existing homeowners to know
Right.
they're thinking of planting a tree, give them that guidance around the space that is required by different species. Yeah,
Yeah, OSU he said, and then, yeah, and the Firewise. Create a list.
Where exactly was that fall on the energy to create that list? Is that something that we need to do? Is that a recommendation?
I don't know if we need a list immediately. To plant a tree in our right of way requires Public Works Director's sign off. And so that might be where it gets caught, and then we can consult Avery and say, hey, we have this space, can you recommend a species to be planted here? And that can be the condition.
My understanding is already kind of a process in place to help mitigate this situation that happened now 20 years ago at Saddlestone. And way back when Saddlestone and Pine Martin or Pine Meadow Village, and when we had a huge influx of aspen trees that came into town. And that's where those all got planted. I mean, that's just how it
Yeah.
was, like 20.
They grow here, so.
Yeah, I mean, when you put water to it, it grows. And people like the leaves of aspen, so it was something kind of,
Quakies.
yeah, new in the area at that time, and now they're all failing and causing problems with sidewalks and whatnot. So. With that being said, getting back to this specific problem we have. My understanding is that we need to get the trees taken out and the tripping hazard needs to get mitigated.
So in this situation, the homeowner is responsible for those. Last I checked, they were interested in removal and replacement of the sidewalks, which would be all their responsibility. Replanting could be recommended if there is viable space for that. And I think this is a good opportunity to have a discussion with Avery and the board on a suitable species for that space.
Well, Avery has recommended some replacements, choke cherry, Japanese tree lilac. You know, one thing I did notice when I was out there about this tree is now it's leaked out. It's a great shade tree, and I bet they appreciate that happening when it's hot and they want to park on the street or something. So I think we could offer these suggestions unless Avery has any others and leave it up to the homeowner if they wanna try and put another tree there.
Avery, the Prunus virginiana, that's what's blooming right now. Right in.
Yeah, you see them around blooming with the white flower. It's pretty fragrant. You can kind of smell it when you're walking around town.
That's, it's a good time to make a case for those.
Yeah.
That's
They are
so
beautiful.
intoxicating. Yeah, they manage like pruning pretty well, I think. Quite a nice crown.
We usually prune ours pretty hard and they take it very
Yeah.
well, cause we gotta keep them out of, traffic on people's hair,
Yeah.
and they do well.
It's a nice recommendation.
Jackson, did you say the I'm sorry, the homeowner's responsible for removing these trees?
Because it was required as part of development, in our development code, it falls on them to maintain and replace if necessary.
Oh, interesting.
And sidewalks, that's always the case. For anybody in town, your sidewalks in front of your house are the responsibility. But yeah, these trees, because they're planted as a requirement for development, the board can't say yes or no to the removal. It's on them to maintain and replace if necessary. So if they were causing a hazard, they would need to remove them. And if there is viable space for a tree to be planted and survive, then we could recommend, Paul could recommend that they plant a tree or even condition that they plant a tree. It looks like there might be some space. Kind of front and center in front of their house, where there was once a tree.
Further away from the driveway would be. And further back from the side.
Yeah, and both those, well, I think choke cherries are, they grow at a decent rate, but they don't ever get too high or they manage pruning, but the lilac trees are really slow growing and. Yeah. Some.
In the dairy line.
I mean, I think all of the trunks are really vulnerable when they're young. But if you can get them to an older age, they get pretty rough and. Yeah,
It's
those
better,
are great.
you know.
Those babies.
I know.
Oh my gosh. Usually the things they eat.
I'd like to say too, I made the,
That's how you know someone has a. What was that, Adrian?
I was gonna say too, I made those recommendations, but I wouldn't want those in any way to be limiting if the homeowner has some other choice of an appropriate tree. I think, of course, that's fine. It's just something I wanted to throw out there. Hey, if you didn't have any idea, these are some that I think might work. So.
So if I go back to the property owner and if they have a tree they're interested in, you okay if I check with you and see if you recommend that or don't recommend it?
Absolutely.
Avery,
Absolutely. Yes.
thank you.
We're gonna take a motion.
Why not? Yeah, folks know that.
Any question on reviewing this? Any other discussion on, this action item A, the routine?
No, I think it's good. I was just looking on here, said, public education expected outcome. Eventually produce a coordinated, no, that's not it, where did it go? Here, something about providing for, information for the public, that we provide information, the type of trees. Where did that go?
I do, that does sound familiar. I think that is somewhere in the plan.
Yeah, it says to start an urban forestry community awareness program and produce and promote a city tree manual. Simplified for the city of Sisters, and that might be something that would be in there, the type of trees. To put in small spaces, big spaces, just like firewise or something. Here, if you're gonna, it's deer friendly species, those type of things. but I think that's probably down the road a bit.
And that's something that if the board had energy for, could work on.
Yeah. Okay, that. That would be.
This comes up again and again,
Yeah.
and even if it was sort of a draft for a long
Well,
time,
you need-
but
yeah,
every
start-
meeting, we're getting more. Information as far as where it would be applicable, like this sidewalk situation or proximity to homes, and yeah. That would be good. And we have so many, basically, it would be pulling from other resources and just kind of cross-referencing if it
Yeah.
doesn't work consistent.
Redmond has something similar to that, and then we can look at that and see what Bed has. You always steal from somebody else, and then we're 1,000 feet higher, or, you know, everything blooms 2 weeks before we do, and Redmond blooms 2 weeks before we do here. Sisters used to do it, so.
So yeah, once we're done reviewing the plan, if there's some kind of work that plan mentions the board having a role in, we can start putting that into some other business at a dedicated time for that, work on it here.
And I would suggest that as we work on that list, that we're also making sure we're not conflicting with what's coming up on the prohibited plants and trees list for wildfire.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that could be.
They'll be conflicting,
Sure,
plant this, but oh no, wait, you can't.
just don't plant it right next to your house, just you have to plant it out on the street, or, yeah.
Jackson,
Yes.
that brings one thing to my attention as far as the replacement of those trees on Horseback Trail. Just we might want to convey something that just kind of comes to my mind as we're talking. We might want to convey to them that there's, you know, generally kind of a planting season here in the spring, which they have a little bit more time left, and then maybe into the fall. But we wouldn't want to encourage people to. Ideally, you're not planting midsummer, and then, you know, if you are planting in the fall, that you make sure you have plenty of time to get the tree irrigated before the.
Yeah, so they will have to apply for a tree removal permit. And that is something that can be conditioned in there, that they will plant during a certain time period.
Mhm.
But when that time comes, I will definitely get in touch with you to see if you have any recommendations to pass along to them. Thank you.
So we'll move on to our the City Sisters of Forestry Management Plan Review, page 11 to 22. How did you guys go about doing this last week?
I was pretty free-form. People had certain things that jumped out at them when we talked about them.
Did you guys go like page by page?
You
No? Or did you guys just kind of use a lump sum of the?
People just jumped in.
Okay.
I mean, but you can do it however you want.
Well, if it was working last time, then. Why don't we keep going?
Book club.
I have
Where's the chair? You and me.
Well, I'm kind of a page by page person myself, so.
So let's go page by page.
On page 11, I do think it would be very cool to have a city. Or to enhance the existing city run. Tree lot or nursery. And. So one thing I learned recently is, well, you know, you can just go out in the forest and. You have to tell them you're gonna do it, but you can go transplant some.
Yeah, manzanita.
Ponderosa, manzanita, little shrubby things, you have to stay away from.
See, you know with this, and
Yeah, and in the spring and the fall, but the spring especially, it was really easy to do. You don't wanna get them too big, and then you put them in pots, and then you can take them home, or in this case, they were planted elsewhere in the forest. But, the city has all that land out by the perk pond, and you know, we could do something. Oh, you know, this is a multi-year
right,
project, but we could do something to have a little stable of plants that are native that we can harvest. And then also some that might not be so easy to pluck out, like larch. I don't know how many places there are where you can go to a larch stand and find a lot of little baby larches, and how many you really want. within the city limits anyway, because they're so
Yeah, they're kind of messy trees, aren't they?
larches
Larches
in the
are,
fall.
yeah, in the fall, I think they all look like they're dead, you know?
But they're so beautiful.
I know, they're beautiful trees. I planted one and luckily it died. Because I see these ones in town that are 150 feet tall. Oh, tree's dead. Oh, no, it's large, you know?
Yeah.
It looks like it's dead.
And I'm always scared when the home sells and it has
Yeah.
large, and I'm like, please wait, please, it's not dead, no, we need to cut it.
Oh, because you're afraid they might think.
Yeah.
Well, it said don't harvest at certain times of the year, the Forest Service is because of larches. You can't harvest at this time because they look like they're dead.
Well,
It
they're
gets
really
super
deeply
big.
rooted, I,
Are they?
yeah, I was really seeing that at even Arbor Day, you know, they came in much deeper containers, so it's kind of equal, the crown of the tree was the root, yeah, they're very deeply rooted, so
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
difficult to transplant for sure. Yeah,
Well, those little larches that came from Project Ponderosa, you know, they just come in a box and then we take them,
bare root.
bare root.
Oh, yeah.
Take them and put them in those long things.
Mm,
And
Tubes.
well, they're not tubes, they're actually, they've figured out that these certain kind of plastic containers that are pots that are kind of long and square are great for both those larches and also ponderosas. That's
Mhm.
their pot of choice these days. They didn't know that, you know, like 10 years ago.
Sure.
But also to things like that, you could get a little nursery growing, you know, some contingent of children could come and at least see it.
So where would you, out at the water treatment plant or where?
Well, I think there's like
We-
10 acres out there.
That's all for wastewater disposal.
Okay.
We do have a small nursery inside of our fenced Public Works headquarters shop area that we irrigate. We have maybe a dozen or two trees in there, like choke cherries, serviceberry, as well as like the seedlings that were left over from the Arbor Day at Creekside. Because we had some, we have them up there, we're watering them, we keep them alive. I think we even have a juniper in a pot. up
Is there more space there or is it pretty much?
It's maxed out on space, but we do have, the system we have is. It's like a 25 gallon bucket set in the ground, and then you have your tree. In another 25 gallon bucket that's inside of that,
Mhm.
and so you just rotate it every so often so that the roots don't grow out, so when you do need a tree, you can just lift it out. Take it out where we plant it.
And this is out by the treatment plant.
Within the fenced area where we do not
Okay.
disperse.
Yeah,
wastewater.
I had a question about. Have where you disperse that effluent, are the junipers removed from there? Are they also,
There are junipers in that forested area,
okay,
predominantly ponderosa.
it's predominantly, but I was looking at Google Earth and examining that and it was talking about harvesting and thinning after so many years. If you get rid of those junipers and you have greater water source there, those ponderosas are gonna grow.
They have more water than they can drink during the summer.
I know, that's what I'm saying. We could plant more there and I don't know what the plans
The
are.
treatment plant area is not an area we want to be planting more trees. We actually go through there routinely, thin it out.
Because,
It gets so much nutrient rich wastewater
yeah.
that they grow like crazy.
I
And so-
wanna put a condo in my yard.
Big huge pond, you can pump it over your house.
And that's an area that we have to get in there because of that nutrient rich water. Shrubbery and ground plants grow rapidly, and so we have to mow that routinely a couple times a year. So
Okay,
we can't have it too dense because we need to get our giant bobcat mounted mower through there.
so you can't add more trees than
Not really, it's pretty dense as it is.
it
Yeah,
is.
we have, like I said, we go in there, a couple of years ago, we had the grant from the state fire marshal, and that funded quite a bit of thinning in there. That was recommended in our wildfire mitigation plan,
Mhm.
and reducing some crown space from individual trees and clusters of trees.
And that's about, how many acres, 100? There.
Close to,
Okay.
all in all.
Yeah,
This area
that's,
here, about 100 acres, the Forest Service, oh, sorry, this, about 100 acres. The fire department has their training facility here. Our shop is located here, and then these are the wastewater collection ponds.
and then around that are the, what do you, with the affluent spreads. Is
Here
that land,
and out here,
does that land belong to the city or does that land belong to Forest Service?
city,
City. Okay.
leased from the county, some of it is owned directly by the city. But it's under city jurisdiction.
How does the city council feel about the potential increase in the canopy with having the 100-year fires of like Labor Day fires, because that's what will, not the 100-year fires is what's gonna take out Sisters and Paradise and Labor Day fires, and that's canopy, right? There's no canopy to break around Sisters. So, I like the idea of increasing the canopy in the same, but it's also like, that's what destroys towns.
Yeah, and to that, the buffer area, for those of you who were here last meeting, the buffer area that's on the south side of this subdivision here. We maintain that specifically as kind of a fire area, really trying to decrease clusters in there.
So it's like a fire break or,
Doing a great job of ladder fuels, but not canopy.
Hmm.
Right, so as soon as that fire gets up in the canopy,
Spreads.
we don't have a break in Sisters.
Gotcha.
Right? Those are the big fires.
Yeah,
that's what's to the west of us though, of Sisters pretty much.
Well, like when you hike Blackview and you look down and you can barely see where Sisters, I mean, I live in Tollgate, so. I bet it's made. But,
Could I add something there?
yeah, please.
Speak.
So something I think about when I'm thinking about canopy coverage goals is not really like the entire city meeting some one goal, but looking at it a little bit more specifically, like when you have a canopy assessment done, you might look neighborhood by neighborhood and you can identify where your canopy is at and where you really
Can't hear you, Avery.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
is that any better?
Avery, if you can hear us, we can't hear you and your
Frozen.
video is frozen.
Oh, I can hear you. Let's see.
It's moving.
Can't hear anything still?
but the monitor does not.
You think you're back, Avery?
I can see you all and hear you all normally.
Yeah, you sound good again.
Okay, sorry. But what I was getting at was that I think with canopy coverage, you're kind of looking at a specific target areas where you want canopy coverage, not just in general throughout the town, but over the streets to increase the longevity of pavement on the roads, to the south sides of buildings to reduce energy consumption in those homes. So, it's kind of a strategic planning of where you want to put that canopy coverage rather than just an increase in overall canopy coverage. And then I had an interesting conversation with Craig Letts, our wildfire consultant, and what we were talking about, and I don't want to put words in his mouth at all, but how I remember the conversation going was that a lot of times when fires enter a city, it's no longer really the vegetation that causes the fire to travel. It's actually home to home. So there's so much to burn inside of a home that actually one home causes the ignition of the adjacent home. And oftentimes you'll see that vegetation still remains, even though most of the structures have burned, that the trees weren't carrying the fire in some cases. So it's worth considering that, I think, as well in the big picture when we're thinking, would increases in canopy coverage necessarily, decrease our wildfire resilience? And I'm not sure that it's kind of a one-to-one thing there. So.
And Sisters, it's kind of an either or. You have like very dense housing and few trees, or you have Tollgate, lots of trees and low density. So it's like catch-22.
Mm-hmm.
More roads.
Back to what Patrick was asking, So as I said, the council is going currently through the defensible space code. And tree canopy came up, and this is, right now, we're just looking at code for development, so new development. The council discussed the canopy. Because there was kind of this balance of, well, a healthy canopy is good, there's always advantages of having a tree canopy, but then you've got the fire. So the vote of the council was to not require developers to reduce the canopy. And that was the decision that was made as a result of trying to retain some of our canopy. But again, everything can always be revisited. But that was the decision of the council on this recent topic of the tree canopies.
They wanted a canopy then.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, the discussion was kind of about how we've been fighting to keep the canopy and even
Right,
protect our
keep the
trees.
Yeah.
Specifically the ponderosa canopy.
Cheryl,
Right.
too, could I add one thing there, Cheryl? I think when we're considering development code, also, having the trees in the right place is also really important. So if we're creating those street strips in a wide enough width there, so you have, rather than these 4-foot strips, you have an 8-foot strip, and you have a healthy tree right along the road, really fulfilling, all providing all those benefits, but it's along the road rather than right adjacent to someone's home. It's right there next to that fire break. And I think that's a really great place to have good trees. But if we provide the space and if we have developers creating that space where trees can go and be in a, good distance from homes and not carry fire, in the community. So just another thing to add.
Yeah, no, thanks. I should have added that there was a lot of other conditions in terms of how close the trees are to the homes, the clearance to the roof and so forth. So there are a lot of details around that. So I'm not saying that we said don't take down any trees or anything.
Yeah,
There are restrictions and expectations and requirements of the developer to thin out the trees, to not have them close to the homes, et cetera, within certain feet of the homes.
I like Avery's comment of also giving the planning code. Incentivizing maintaining some trees by giving space for them to be in the right places, like the right of way area, so they're shading the tree but are not a fire hazard. So strategic ways to maintain a canopy without keeping or increasing the risk. And to your point, Patrick, at some point, it's like you can't mitigate all the risk when you live in the forest, but yeah, as much as being like really cognizant of the why and the how. It's a lot.
What about like deciduous trees too? To provide cover in the summer, trees along the street that cover up some of the asphalt. It cools your town, along with your ponderosas. But if you're gonna put them along the street, you've gotta have enough space for these type of trees to grow there. And then you have leaf cleanup and in the fall, and you see this in Bend, they have a lot of streets with a lot of oak, some type of oak tree and other deciduous trees, and they're all out there in the fall with their blowers blowing all the leaves up, and that's gonna be a cost, but also it covers some of the asphalt and cools your sidewalks and your asphalt, and it makes this just a little different than just a ponderosa forest, but there are fir trees here too, and used to be a lot of cottonwoods and along the canals, and they started dying when the canals got dried up. Yeah.
Well, I'm getting back to Teresa's comments about the nursery. I'm kind of hearing, and we also talked about the plant tree list. I'm hearing you guys discussing potentially things you want to address at some time when you can, so maybe it would behoove you to have a project list. Just kind of a wish list, and then you're gonna come back and prioritize that, and decide what's most important. Cause as I read through the urban forestry plan, I did see things like the nursery, like, oh,
Right.
well, that we weren't really focusing on that. And maybe that's something you would want to begin doing.
Yeah.
Time
The
permitting.
schools have nurseries, I mean, greenhouses.
Mhm.
And we've had different programs depending on finding a teacher that wants to help sponsor it at the middle school or at the high school.
Mhm.
Forest Service has worked with the schools in providing plants, native plants,
Mhm.
and growing them in the greenhouses.
Mhm.
And we could do the trees, it's just, I mean, I would be willing to go and talk to the teachers, since I know a couple of them still. Reba Gibbet has been involved in that in the past. And like I say, the middle school has a nursery. And the high school has a nursery, and I don't think the high school nursery is being used right now. But again, you've gotta find someone that wants to, have a club. Or find a teacher that wants to incorporate that into the biology class or into the environmental or whatever class, the IE class, something like that.
Mhm.
And start raising,
Yeah, our nursery as it stands right now is kind of used for replacement street trees.
Mhm.
Especially in the downtown core where they're a specific species, specific size, so they can fit in those kind of planter areas in the sidewalk. And of course, maintaining other trees like the ones from the Arbor Day,
Mhm. Mhm.
just being kept alive until we can find a place for them.
Mhm. Yeah.
well, I would be willing to look into that and talk to the schools.
Okay, so I like your idea, Cheryl.
Right,
Project
let's give them priority.
prioritization. And we can't do it all, but we could put away money. Yeah.
There were a lot of good recommendations in this plan.
Right,
Yeah.
and again, we gotta kind of just pick and I have, I have 3 cottonwood plants, trees. For you,
Little babies? Oh. Wow.
they're in the back of my car, I've got a couple of lilacs, I've got, that's at home, I've got, weeping birch. That I've got some little birches coming up right now,
These are all volunteers from.
and I potted them and then I have
Nice.
been,
Do you live next to the Esalen?
no.
Sounds like we got here.
They just, we have sprinklers and then they just come up and
Uh-huh.
I have some golden chains. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
No.
It's a kind of a spindly tall tree, but it has these yellow blossoms.
Oh, I think I know what you mean.
They cut
Really
down.
showy.
Yeah, they're very showy.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 or 3 of those in pots and I've got a whole bunch of little ones coming up right now, so. Anyway, I like the growth stuff, so.
I will have to leave at 4:20. I
Okay.
apologize.
Yeah, I like your idea too of making some priorities, that might be something to look at on this list.
So I've in my review, and I don't know if other people do too, but in my review of the last segments, I have a bunch of comments, and I think it would be fun to have a place. Maybe there's like a shared document where we could put these comments, and then maybe at a certain point we could go through them and create a punch list, and prioritize a few things. Because I could see a lot of opportunity through basically evaluating our current management plan to actually utilize that as a way of making some recommendations to city council from the urban forestry board on things we'd like to see. So yeah, I have quite a few, and I don't know if we have time to go through all of them, but I don't know if other people have comments on the last the 11 to 22 as well.
There are about 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Where people. So.
Can we do a Google document that folks can add their
To
comments?
avoid serial meetings, which would
Yeah.
be more than 2 board members communicating about something at the same time, board related. if you send the comments to me, and then I will put those into a packet, you know, when we get to that.
Okay.
You know, if you guys hold on to your comments, and
Okay,
then when we start talking more about, like Cheryl said, project list, wish list, we can get all those in a packet and start talking about them publicly.
Okay, that's a good idea. Sorry for the work that makes for you. Okay.
Well, let's put this as an agenda item for next meeting to brainstorm. That project list. And then from there, we can at least get stuff written down. We're not gonna prioritize, but let's get stuff written down.
yeah,
And then that'll give us some time to chew on it, and then the following, maybe one or two meetings after that, we'll have another agenda item on. Kind of trying to prioritize on where we're gonna adjust some energy, and then, you know, we'll just start clicking away at that.
Yeah, so would it be better if folks just came to that meeting with that agenda item with their ideas rather than sending them to me? Cut out the middleman.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, that's kind of what we're morphing into here, right? What we're doing right here, right now.
well, we're not creating a list,
Oh.
we're not getting it together to help us prioritize stuff, so a lot of great ideas. I feel like there's topics that are coming up in a lot of our action items of inventory, recommendations, nursery, right, with more clear direction. And we have,
manual, that whatever.
yeah, we have something that we can address, be like, okay, like, here's our within 2 feet of sidewalk, here's our list, here's 4 feet, here's our list. I'm just grabbing it because it's fresh. Right, here's, you know, nursery ideas, you know, so. How's that?
Yeah,
So in a month or two,
Let's shoot for, let's plan on bringing those ideas to our next meeting,
next
and then we'll create the list. Once the list is established, then the following meeting we'll discuss on.
prioritize, yeah,
Prioritizing that.
you pick a
I
top
think-
5 or
Yeah, I think the
something.
top are gonna be pretty easy once it's communicated and documented on what that list is gonna look like. And we'll get the top few taken off the list right away with just that documentation. So.
Yeah.
That sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah, and you know. Maybe, I don't know, it's just thinking of. When we get to that point in a couple of meetings that we could, maybe something in the nugget about this is what. The Forestry Board is doing, looking at priorities and something in a small article. In there, cause it says something about, you know, letting the public know.
Be one of the projects.
Heritage tree documentation
Sorry,
as a project. I thought you were writing down project stuff,
yes,
heritage tree documentation.
So in a way, this become, you're setting your goals as a board. What do you want to accomplish this year?
Thanks.
Democracy at its finest. Okay,
Looking at time and
I'd like to.
we didn't get through the amount of pages we wanted to, but for the sake of time, I think unless anybody would like to,
I don't need to be here for you guys to continue, it's just, I don't want to stop it if I have to leave early. Would you still have a quorum?
Have to leave as well.
we would still have a quorum with 3 board members if the 2 of you would have to
Okay.
leave.
Okay.
Would you like this to remain on the agenda, this section of the management plan? For further review, since we didn't get through a whole lot of it, do you want it to remain on there, or would you like to move on to the next section?
I think we need to finish looking at this.
I'll keep that on. For next meeting.
Same, 1 through 22.
Yeah. And then
Could
you
I
can-
add, you know, I wonder if we're gonna kind of compile all of our own ideas in a future meeting, whether or not we could just keep our current list for pages 11 through 22. And then pages 22 through 33 or whatever, we would just come with a compiled list to share next month, rather than extending this conversation, which we already all have our own comments. It seems like we've reviewed 11 through 22, but because at that point, then you would have that compiled list of everybody's comments, which we could go through rather than, sharing them without actually getting them on a list, if that makes sense.
Are you want us, your recommendation is to get through the management plan and then create the list?
Yeah, to continue our review and compile our notes and then bring your compilation of your notes in. But I'm perfectly fine with slowing down the process too, but I just wondered if, I've had the time. I reviewed 11 through 22 and I have a list here. So I would be willing to do 22 through 33 personally, but I don't know if other people are ready for that.
So there's two things you guys are addressing. You're addressing familiarizing yourselves with this plan. And having comments about that, and then off of that. Starting this project list, right? Okay. So I think there's two things you're trying to do here.
Yeah. And I think you could do, we could do both at one time, but we need to say which one we wanna pick first. And we could be doing the other one along with it ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like prioritizing and these bullet points we wanna address, and then we can still be going through this.
Might be helpful to finish one thing before moving on to the next.
I think we should get through 11 through 30, whatever, 11 through 22.
Are members comfortable submitting their responses to 11 through 22 and without us talking about it in a meeting?
Well, personally, I find value in us talking about these things together. Whether it's just reviewing the plan and then discussing. Cause like today I learned things about the specifics of our City of Sisters tree planting and nursery that I was generally aware that there was something, but I didn't know exactly what went on there. And so that's just me. I find value in.
You can bounce things off and then you learn
Yeah.
something else that you hadn't thought of.
Or that you
Yeah.
realize the error of your own thinking.
It's true, and that's,
The
you know,
limitations of some idea that you had that somebody else can say, or just like, after all, Pat is a fire person, so he has like.
is that what we always talk about fires?
He has such a
I'm a
perspective.
maniac.
Relative.
Okay, so 11 through 22. I skipped the violation.
I would just, like, we just didn't get far into it.
Yeah.
And then I think when we're discussing it, if some things drop out, like, well, great project idea, we can just somehow make a note of it. Doesn't have to be a big.
Going forward,
project
I'll
checks.
I
the
like how
notepad
you-
for what you guys want.
You
Okay.
clarify things, yeah, left and right, or one and two, that's good sometimes. Sometimes we start thinking of it together, and,
Yeah, that was a good one.
yeah, it's a good point, for sure.
Staff updates before.
Yeah.
we do staff updates real quick. The one tree that was removed on Jefferson and Pine, the corner there, the house, you folks got an FYI about that a little while back. That was one of those development required removal and replacements. They did replace the tree, lovely, healthy young tree. Go check it out. The Oak Street right of way. That management plan was very early in the draft form. For further discussion of that area, aside from just looking at the trees, is a Parks Board concern. We dove in, is a Parks Board concern. So any, Avery and I, we can go out there, start getting a collection of the stand or an inventory of the stand, and get some recommendations on the health and maybe some thinning or any kind of work that Avery recommends us doing out there. But aside from that, any kind of mention of this as trail or a park needs to go to the park school.
Okay,
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
so we're off the case then.
You're off the case. Thank you for your patience while I dug into that one. Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions, comments, or concerns about that? What's that?
Does Dana know about that?
Not yet, no.
There's quite a bit of energy on this,
Mhm.
so. I
Oh.
think
Bye, Bridget.
keeping him
Thank you, everybody.
involved with the monetary backing would be appreciated.
Just wanted to bring that to you folks first.
Yeah.
Before I go to that. And that is all I have.
What did you just say? You better monitor that.
She's donating funds for upwards of 20 grand to help with this.
We said that a long time ago, but he didn't seem to. Make
At
that
the last
specific
meeting, he
plan.
proposed the city put forth.
Yeah, there was no word about him, but. The last time he was here.
Gotcha.
He was asking for a line item to budget for improvements to the area
Yeah,
and proposing that the city put forth that.
That changed quickly.
yeah. Well, I didn't, I was like thinking of it real time, but I thought I'm just not gonna say anything. Obviously. In the meeting last week.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah. He wasn't here. You know, what we're referring to, like way back when.
First time.
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for two.
just to kind of get attention, I think, to get it rolling.
This is historical stuff that happened before you were on the board and then you
Okay.
weren't here last month.
Right, it was.
And there was another update that was a little different from the first approach and all good, just,
Something going on.
yeah. Change in current.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Any other feedback
I
update?
don't have any more staff updates.
Okay,
Any board members have any more comments?
well, I was gonna say something nice about Arbor Day, but. 2 out of 3 people who were there left, so maybe I'll just wait till next time.
Sure.
Yeah. It was a great Arbor Day.
It was.
I didn't see you out there, you were probably still sick.
I was still, yeah, under the weather.
Yeah, so it was great and Patrick was there, darling children and many kids.
There's a lot of kids.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's.
Where did you plant? Well,
along the
fence?
new roundabout.
Yeah,
Across from where the school property is, other side of the roundabout.
okay.
If you look as you're leaving town, look to the right and you will notice there's some like maybe 30-year-old trees back there. And then in front of them are a whole strip of new ponderosas and a few larches.
Okay.
That are about yay tall.
I'm not sure who planned it, but they picked a good day to not have school. So they
Yeah.
can have kids do something.
Yeah. It just worked out that way.
Yeah.
It was on Friday.
Now how are they gonna get watered? Just natural?
No, that was all pre-planned.
Okay.
It's all
Said
your.
the irrigation lines are already laid.
Oh,
We, a couple days prior, hot tapped a main line. Did a transmission lateral north from where we hooked in and then east down the property line on the public side. And then lateral off of that for underground drip irrigation around the clusters or individual trees.
Very cool.
mhm, good,
So they're gonna grow fast.
that's good.
Otherwise they would just
Foot and a
Yeah.
half.
get gasped out there. In the wind and the heat and the shade. Yeah, it was good. We were on
Avery.
TV,
Made on TV? Yeah.
we could get it on TV. Yeah. Did you see?
Twenty
it?
one.
I didn't happen to see the
But
for the recording, the words escaping me at the moment, but I did see them interviewing Eddie during the
Yeah.
event.
Anybody
if I can
go,
find it, I'll send it. to
anybody
you.
go listen to our senator speak?
I could.
I spaced and I forgot. I went and listened to Wyden and. Anything new? Did you listen to both?
I listened to both and Janelle's.
Yeah.
I went to Janelle's also. But Janelle was there Saturday too, and that was it was good. Anyway, we digress, but
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, everything.
no, Oh, what about,
Are they speaking about Arbor Day?
no,
we did,
jumped. ship
Senator
to
and
town.
Congresswoman had a meeting Saturday at the school. About what's going on locally here.
Oh, they did? At the school? Oh, you mean Sisters High School?
Yeah, Sisters
The
High School,
town hall.
the town hall at the high school.
So it was for all of Deschutes County. There's nothing to do with Arbor Day.
No,
So we digressed away.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
my fault.
It's all right. It was good.
Avery, do you have anything to add?
No, not, I mean, not much. I think I'm excited about the urban forestry management plan, and Teresa, I appreciate you bringing that as an agenda item. I think it'll be good to go through all those things together. But no, nothing particular to add for the good of the order.
Thanks for being here and looking forward to many to come. We'll adjourn the meeting. See everybody next month.
Thanks, Avery.
Thanks, Avery.
See ya. Meeting adjourned. We have to say, I propose that we adjourn, and Chairman adjourn us.